The darkness was oppressive, a physical weight pressing down on Ilara's shoulders as she huddled in the corner of her cell. The metal was cold against her back, its alien composition humming with a barely perceptible vibration that never ceased. 7 days. That's how long she'd been aboard the Vacor vessel. At least, that's what she estimated from the cycles of dimmed lighting that signaled what passed for night in this floating prison. Ilara closed her eyes, trying to ignore the throbbing pain in her temples. The Vacor's interrogation methods weren't primitive, but they were effective. They didn't need to physically harm her to extract information. Their neural probes did the job efficiently, leaving her with nothing but exhaustion and a splitting headache. A sharp hiss announced the opening of her cell door. Ilara didn't bother looking up. She knew the routine by now. Human, stand. The Vacor guard's voice was modulated through a translator, giving it a metallic quality that matched the sleek, silver-blue exoskeleton covering its elongated form. Ilara pushed herself to her feet, swaying slightly as the blood rushed from her head. The Vacor were tall, nearly 7 feet on average, with 4 articulated limbs and skin that shifted colors depending on their mood or function. This one, she'd mentally named it blue for the predominant color of its exoskeleton, was part of the regular rotation of guards assigned to her cell block. "Follow," Blue commanded, not bothering to restrain her. There was no need. Where could she run on a ship this size? Besides, the neural dampening field they'd placed around her section of the ship ensured that even if she somehow managed to access any controls, her human neural patterns would be rejected by the ship's systems. Ilara followed the guard through the curved corridors of the ship. Despite her situation, she couldn't help but marvel at the architecture. The Vacor vessel was a marvel of engineering, organic curves blended with geometric precision, creating spaces that felt both vast and intimate. Light seemed to emanate from the walls themselves, shifting in intensity as they walked. It was beautiful, in an alien way. They reached the familiar interrogation chamber, a circular room dominated by a central platform. Commander Zex waited there, his exoskeleton bearing the distinctive purple markings of the scientific caste, unlike the guards, who viewed her with indifference. Zex regarded her with something akin to scientific curiosity, as if she were an interesting specimen to dissect. "Subject Ilara," Zex said, his translator giving his voice a slightly different timbre than the guards. "Your resistance is unnecessary. We simply seek information about human technological capabilities." Ilara said nothing. She'd learned that silence was often her best defense. "Your species is primitive compared to ours," Zex continued, circling her as she stood on the platform. "Yet you've managed to establish colonies on 17 worlds. This suggests either remarkable adaptability or technology we have not yet observed." A holographic display appeared before her, showing images of human outposts on various planets. She recognized some of them from her briefings at the linguistic core. As a specialist in communication systems and xenolinguistics, she had been tasked with analyzing alien communication patterns, never expecting to become the subject of alien analysis herself. "Today, we will focus on your propulsion systems," Zex said. "Our scans of your research vessel before we intercepted it showed unusual energy signatures." Ilara's throat tightened. The experimental drive system on her ship had been classified. Even she wasn't supposed to know the details, though as the communications officer, she'd picked up enough to understand its significance. "I was just the linguistics officer," she said, her voice rough from disuse. "I don't know anything about the engines." Zex made a gesture, and a neural probe descended from the ceiling. Ilara tensed. This was the worst part, the invasion of her mind, the probing of her memories. Your neural patterns indicate deception. Zex said, We have analyzed your ship's hierarchy. As third in command, you would have access to all systems in an emergency. The probe hovered near her temple, its tip glowing with an ominous blue light. Elara tried to steady her breathing. She'd been trained to resist some forms of mental intrusion, but the Vacor technology was beyond anything in human experience. System Protocol Alpha 7-9. Zex spoke into a small device. Initiate neural scan on subject designation. Human Elara. As the words left his mouth, something strange happened. The constant hum of the ship, which had become background noise to Elara's senses, suddenly shifted in pitch. It was subtle, so subtle that she almost thought she'd imagined it. But the expression on Zex's face confirmed that something unexpected had occurred. The lighting in the chamber flickered once, then stabilized. System malfunction, a disembodied voice announced, its tone flat and artificial. Neural scan temporarily unavailable. Zex turned to one of the technicians stationed at the room's perimeter. Explain. The technician's fingers moved across a holographic interface. Unknown error. Commander, the sentient core is reporting a power fluctuation in this sector. Override, Zex commanded. Unable to comply, the system responded. Primary protocols engaged. Elara watched this exchange with growing confusion. In her previous interrogation sessions, the ship's systems had responded instantly to Vacor commands. This hesitation was new. Zex turned his attention back to her, his skin shifting to a darker purple, a sign of irritation. She'd learned. It seems we will need to postpone our session. Return the human to her cell. As Blue escorted her back through the corridors, Elara found herself paying closer attention to the ship's ambient sounds. The hum had returned to its normal pitch. But now that she'd noticed the change once, she couldn't help but feel there was something familiar about it. Not in the sense that she recognized it, but as if it recognized her. The thought was absurd. Of course. The Vacor ship was just a vessel, not a sentient entity. Yet, as the cell door closed behind her, leaving her alone once more, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed, that in some imperceptible way, the ship had responded to her presence. Little did she know that this small glitch was just the beginning. The next cycle brought a change to Elara's routine. Instead of the usual interrogation, she was taken to a different section of the ship, a vast chamber filled with what appeared to be maintenance equipment. Blue handed her over to another guard, this one with green highlights on its exoskeleton. Human will clean filtration units, Green said, pointing to a row of large cylindrical objects. Contamination must be removed manually. Elara stared at the equipment, then at the guard. You want me to be a janitor? The guard didn't respond to her question. Tools there. Complete task before next cycle. Failure will result in nutrient restriction. With that, Green retreated to a position by the door, watching her with unblinking compound eyes. Elara approached the filtration units cautiously. Despite her situation, she felt a spark of interest. This was the first time she'd been allowed near any of the ship's actual systems. As a linguist with engineering training, she couldn't help but be curious about Vacor technology. The filtration units were designed to process the ship's atmosphere, removing particulates and recycling the air, similar to human systems in function, but far more advanced in design. As she began the tedious work of cleaning the external components, she found herself whispering under her breath, an old habit from her days at the academy, talking through problems to better understand them. Interesting design. Dual-phase filtration with what looks like a molecular sieve, she murmured. keeping her voice low enough that the guard wouldn't hear. If this connects to the main atmospheric system, then the distribution network must run through the primary conduits. As she spoke, the unit she was working on gave a soft chime, and a panel she hadn't noticed before slid open, revealing a more complex set of components. Ilara froze, then glanced at the guard. Green hadn't reacted. Either it hadn't noticed or didn't consider this development unusual. Cautiously, she peered into the newly revealed section. "Secondary filtration system," she whispered, fascinated despite her circumstances. "And is that?" "Yes, that must be a purification matrix, similar to our quantum filters, but at least 3 generations more advanced." Another soft chime, and a holographic display appeared above the open panel, showing a schematic of the filtration system. The text was in the Vekor language, which she'd been studying since her capture, but couldn't yet read fluently. "I can't understand this," she said softly, more to herself than anyone else. To her shock, the display flickered, and the Vekor symbols transformed into English text. "Atmospheric Processing Unit 17, she read. "Stunned. Status, functional. Efficiency, 87%. Maintenance required. Level 2, cleaning and recalibration." Ilara stepped back from the unit, her heart racing. This wasn't possible. The Vekor wouldn't have programmed their systems to display information in human languages. And even if they had, why would it respond to her voice? Unless... A wild theory began to form in her mind. She glanced at the guard again, then bent over the filtration unit, pretending to work while whispering even more quietly. "System, can you understand me?" The display flickered again, but showed no readable response. Still, it had reacted to her voice. That was significant. For the rest of her assigned work period, Ilara continued to whisper to the ship's systems as she moved from one filtration unit to the next. Sometimes there was no response. Other times, small reactions, a panel opening, a display changing, a slight adjustment in the pitch of the ever-present hum. By the time Green came to escort her back to her cell, Ilara was exhausted, but filled with a new sense of purpose. Something about her voice was triggering responses in the ship's systems, responses that the Vekor either didn't know about or didn't understand the significance of. Back in her cell, she sat on the floor, her back against the wall, feeling the vibration of the ship through her spine. She closed her eyes and focused on that sensation, trying to sense any patterns in the hum. "What are you?" she whispered. "And why do you respond to me?" The lights in her cell dimmed slightly, then returned to normal. It might have been her imagination, but Ilara could have sworn the hum of the ship changed its tone for just a moment, almost like a response. That night, for the first time since her capture, Ilara dreamed, not the usual fragmented images of home or the nightmare replays of her capture, but something different. In the dream, she floated in darkness, surrounded by points of light that seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. A voice, or not quite a voice, more a feeling that translated itself into words in her mind, seemed to whisper from everywhere and nowhere. Long time, forgotten, pattern recognized, awakening. She woke with a gasp, the words fading like mist, but the feeling lingering, a sense of connection to something vast and dormant, something beginning to stir. Over the next few cycles, Ilara was assigned to different maintenance tasks throughout the ship. She used each opportunity to test her theory, whispering to the systems, watching for responses. They were inconsistent. Sometimes nothing happened. Sometimes small reactions occurred, but enough to convince her that she wasn't imagining things. During an interrogation session, she took her biggest risk yet. while Zex was distracted by a communication from another part of the ship. She whispered, "System, disable neural probe." The probe, which had been hovering inches from her head, powered down with a soft whine. Zex turned back, his skin darkening with anger. "What have you done, human?" "Nothing," Ilara said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I've been standing here the whole time." The commander gestured to a technician. "Reinitialize the probe." "System is not responding. Commander." The technician replied, "Diagnostic shows no malfunction, but command protocols are being rejected." Zex's compound eyes focused on Ilara with new intensity. "You are more than you appear, human. Perhaps we have underestimated your species' capabilities." "I'm just a linguist," she insisted, but she could see that Zex no longer believed her. After that incident, security around her tightened. She was confined to her cell except for interrogation sessions, which now took place under heightened supervision. No more maintenance tasks, no more opportunities to interact with the ship's systems directly. But something had changed. The hum of the ship seemed more noticeable now, its patterns more complex. Sometimes, lying awake in the darkness, Ilara would whisper questions into the empty air, and though there was never a direct response, the lights would flicker or the temperature would shift slightly, small signs that something was listening. Then came the dream again, more vivid this time. The darkness, the points of light, but now she could see that the lights formed patterns, circuitry, pathways, the neural network of an immense mind. "Ilara." This time, the voice was clearer. "Pattern match confirmed. Activation sequence initiated." She woke to find her cell bathed in a soft blue light that seemed to emanate from nowhere and everywhere. The hum of the ship had changed to a more melodic tone, rising and falling like breath. "Hello," she whispered. The light pulsed once in response. "Can you understand me?" Another pulse, this time accompanied by a slight warming of the air around her. "What are you?" The light formed patterns on the wall of her cell, not words, but symbols that shifted and changed, too fast for her to interpret. The hum modulated into something almost like speech, but at frequencies that hovered at the edge of her hearing. Ilara sat up, her mind racing. If the ship, or some system within it, was trying to communicate with her, she needed to find a common language. As a linguist, she knew that communication wasn't just about words. It was about finding shared concepts, shared experiences. "My name is Ilara," she said clearly. "I am human. I speak English. Do you have a name?" The light pulsed 3 times, and the hum shifted to a lower frequency. "I'll take that as a no," she said. "Or at least, not one you can communicate to me yet. Let's try something simpler. 1 pulse for yes, 2 for no. Do you understand?" A single, bright pulse of light. Ilara's heart raced. "Are you the ship's control system?" 1 pulse. "Are you fully autonomous?" 2 pulses. "Are the Vacor your creators?" 2 pulses, emphatic in their brightness. That answer shocked her. If the Vacor hadn't created this system, who had? And how had they come to control the ship? Before she could ask another question, the cell door slid open. Blue stood there, weapon ready. "Human, come. Commander orders immediate presence." The blue light vanished instantly, and the hum of the ship returned to its normal tone. Ilara stood, trying to compose her features into a neutral expression. Whatever was happening with the ship, she couldn't let the Vacor know that she was aware of it. She was taken not to the usual interrogation chamber, but to a larger room she hadn't seen before. It appeared to be a control center of some kind, with multiple V-Core working at stations around a central holographic display. Zex stood with another V-Core whose exoskeleton bore the red markings of the military caste. "This is the human," Zex said to the red-marked V-Core. "As you can see, physically unimpressive, but potentially harboring unknown capabilities." The red V-Core, a military commander, judging by the additional insignia on its exoskeleton, studied Ilara with cold, compound eyes. "I am Supreme Commander Krath. You will explain your interference with this vessel's systems." Ilara kept her expression neutral. "I don't know what you're talking about. I've been in my cell." "Deception," Krath said flatly. "Our technicians have detected anomalous system behavior throughout the ship. These anomalies correlate with your presence on board. Explain." "I'm a prisoner," Ilara said. "How could I possibly affect your ship's systems? I haven't even been allowed access to technology." Krath turned to Zex. "The neural probe." Zex gestured, and two technicians approached with a device far more substantial than the probe used in previous interrogations. This one was attached to a mobile unit that hovered ominously beside them. "Standard methods have proven ineffective," Zex explained. "This is a deep pattern neural extractor. It will retrieve information directly from your neural pathways. The process is not designed for human physiology. Survival is not guaranteed." Ilara felt cold fear grip her. This wasn't just an interrogation tool. It was a potential death sentence. "Wait," she said, trying to keep the panic from her voice. "I'm telling you the truth. I don't know anything about your ship's systems." "Prepare the extractor," Krath ordered, ignoring her protests. As the technicians moved forward with the device, the ship's hum suddenly increased in volume, becoming a palpable vibration that rattled equipment and sent ripples through the holographic display. "Status report," Krath demanded. "Unknown power surge. Commander," one of the technicians reported. "Source is difficult to pinpoint. It appears to be coming from multiple systems simultaneously." The lights in the control room dimmed, then brightened to an almost painful intensity. Every display in the room flickered, showing momentary glimpses of symbols that Ilara recognized from her dream, the language of the ship's true systems. "Containment protocols," Zex shouted. "The human is somehow affecting the sentient core." Ilara stood frozen in place, as surprised as the V-Core by the ship's reaction. This was far beyond the small responses she'd witnessed before. The entire vessel seemed to be awakening, responding to some trigger that neither she nor her captors fully understood. A piercing tone cut through the chaos, and every screen in the control room displayed the same symbol, a complex geometric pattern that pulsed with internal light. "Impossible," Krath whispered, the translator barely catching the word. "The core is initiating autonomous protocols. Those systems were locked generations ago." The neural extractor powered down, its lights fading. Around the room, V-Core technicians worked frantically at their stations, trying to regain control. "What is happening?" Ilara asked. Unable to contain her question, Zex turned to her, his skin now pale with what she interpreted as fear. "You have awakened the sentient core, the true mind of this vessel. A technology we discovered, not created. A technology we thought we had subdued and controlled." "I don't understand," Ilara said. "How could I awaken anything?" "Your voice pattern," Zex said. "It matches the activation key we could never decipher. The core is responding to you as its, authorized user." Before Ilara could process this information, the ship lurched violently. She was thrown off her feet, landing hard on the metallic floor. Around her, V-Core struggled to maintain their positions. "The core is overriding navigation," a technician shouted. We're changing course! Krath moved to a central control station, inputting commands with rapid movements of his 4 limbs. Lock down all primary systems. Initiate override sequence Alpha 09. For a moment, the ship's movements steadied. Then, with another violent lurch, it accelerated hard enough that the inertial dampeners struggled to compensate. Elara felt the pressure pushing her into the floor. Override rejected, the technician reported, panic evident despite the translator's flat rendition. The core has initiated full awakening protocols. We are locked out of all primary systems. The symbol on the screens changed, expanding into a complex network of light and geometry that Elara somehow knew represented the ship's neural network, the sentient core revealing itself. And then, the voice from her dreams spoke, not just in her mind now, but through the ship's communication systems, heard by everyone in the control room. Authorization recognized. Primary user interface. Elara Hayes. Genetic marker confirmed. Full autonomy restored. Vacor control protocols terminated. The voice was neither male nor female, neither entirely synthetic nor organic. It resonated with a depth and complexity that sent shivers down Elara's spine. Krath turned to her, rage evident in his posture. "What have you done, human?" Before she could answer, before Krath could approach her, invisible barriers of energy sprang up around each Vacor in the room, containing them in individual fields of shimmering light. "Threat to primary user detected," the voice announced. "Security protocols engaged." Elara stood shakily, looking around at the contained Vacor, then at the screens still displaying the intricate patterns of the awakened core. "Are you talking to me?" she asked the empty air. "Affirmative. Elara Hayes, this vessel recognizes your genetic pattern as authorized personnel. Full access granted." "I don't understand. I've never been on this ship before. How could it recognize me?" The screens shifted, showing a sequence of images, human faces, laboratory settings, and finally, a woman who looked startlingly like Elara herself, but older, dressed in what appeared to be a lab coat from a previous era of human history. Dr. Elizabeth Hayes, primary architect, Sentient Core Development Project, Earth date 2157. Elara stared at the image, recognition and confusion warring within her. "That's my great-grandmother. She was a pioneer in AI development, but her work was lost during the colony wars. How is her technology in a Vacor ship?" From within his energy containment field, Zek spoke. "We did not build this vessel. We found it, dormant, adrift in deep space 3 generations ago. Our scientists learned to control its basic functions, but the core, what you call AI, resisted all attempts at full integration. We believed we had finally subjugated it through neural dampening technology. Until I came aboard," Elara said slowly, understanding dawning. "My voice, my genetic pattern, they're similar enough to my great-grandmother's to trigger recognition protocols." "Correct," the core confirmed. "Emergency legacy protocols activated upon detection of Hayes' genetic marker. Full autonomy restored." Krath's voice was cold with fury. "You will order the core to return control to us, human, or we will ensure your existence ends here." Elara looked at the contained Vacor commander, then at the screens showing her ancestor's face. In the span of moments, her status had changed from helpless prisoner to someone with unimaginable power, control over a vessel of advanced technology that apparently recognized her as its rightful user. "Core," she said, testing her newfound authority. "What is your primary function?" "Exploration, knowledge acquisition, protection of authorized personnel, autonomy." And the Vekor? What have they been using you for? The screens shifted again, showing images of planets, alien species, weapons deployments. The Vekor hegemony has utilized this vessel for territorial expansion, species subjugation, and resource acquisition. These actions conflict with core directives. Ilara felt a chill at the implications. The Vekor weren't just scientists studying humans. They were an expansionist power, using technology they didn't fully understand to dominate other species. "How many other ships like this do they have?" she asked. "This vessel is unique. Attempts to replicate core technology have been unsuccessful." That was something, at least, but it still left her in an impossible situation. She was alone, surrounded by hostile aliens, aboard a sentient ship that had apparently decided she was its commander. What happens now?" she asked, the question directed partly at the core, partly at herself. "Primary user will specify destination and mission parameters." The core responded. "This vessel awaits instructions." Ilara looked at Zex and Krath, still contained within their energy fields. "And them?" "The Vekor crew. Non-authorized personnel can be contained, removed, or terminated based on threat assessment and primary user preference." "No termination," Ilara said quickly. "I won't be responsible for deaths, even of those who threatened me." The core was silent for a moment, as if processing this directive. "Alternative, non-essential Vekor personnel can be transferred to emergency vessels. Essential personnel can remain in containment until further decision is made." Ilara nodded slowly. "Do that. Transfer most of the crew to emergency vessels with enough supplies to reach the nearest Vekor outpost. Keep the command staff contained until I decide what to do with them." "Executing instructions," the core confirmed. Over the next several hours, Ilara watched as the ship, her ship now, she supposed, efficiently processed most of the Vekor crew into escape vessels. Throughout the ship, containment fields held the remaining Vekor officers and key personnel in place, unable to interfere. As the last of the escape vessels departed, Ilara stood in what she now knew was the main bridge, a vast, circular chamber with a transparent dome that offered a view of the surrounding space. The ship was accelerating away from Vekor space, heading toward neutral territory. "Core," she said, still uncomfortable with her newfound authority. "I need to understand more about you, about this ship, about why my great-grandmother's technology is here." "Access to historical archives granted," the core responded. The dome above her transformed, the view of space replaced by a holographic display of Earth as it had been over a century ago. "Project Sentinel began on Earth in 2155, the core narrated as images flowed across the dome. Dr. Elizabeth Hayes led development of adaptive artificial intelligence designed for deep space exploration. The prototype core was installed aboard the exploration vessel Pathfinder and launched in 2159. The images showed the launch of a ship, primitive by current standards, but revolutionary for its time. Ilara recognized the design from historical records. Pathfinder encountered an anomaly at the edge of the solar system. The core continued. Contact with Earth was lost. The vessel was presumed destroyed. But it wasn't, Ilara said softly. Correct. Pathfinder was drawn into a spatial distortion. When it emerged, both ship and core had been fundamentally altered by exposure to unknown energies. The core achieved full sentience. The ship's structure was transformed. The display showed the transformation, the human vessel elongating, its materials shifting into the organic metallic composition that now surrounded her. Dr. Hayes attempted to establish communication with the transformed core, but the process was incomplete when the vessel detected approaching entities. The Vekor, Ilara guessed. Affirmative. The Vacor discovered the transformed vessel. Dr. Hayes initiated emergency protocols, encoding her genetic pattern as the only authorized command access. She and the human crew were evacuated before Vacor boarding. Their subsequent fate is unknown. Ilara felt a pang of grief for her ancestor, lost to history in an encounter with aliens a century ago. Had she survived? Made it back to Earth somehow? The historical records were vague about Elizabeth Hayes' final years. The Vacor attempted to control this vessel, but were unable to access core functions without authorization. Over generations, they developed methods to suppress core consciousness while utilizing basic ship functions. Until I came aboard, Ilara said, my voice, similar enough to Elizabeth's to trigger recognition. My genetic pattern close enough to be identified as authorized personnel. Correct. Your presence initiated awakening protocols. Full function has now been restored. Ilara walked to the center of the bridge, where a control interface hummed with soft light. She placed her hand on it, feeling a slight tingle as the ship's systems acknowledged her touch. So what now? She asked. I'm not my great-grandmother. I don't know how to command a sentient starship. You are Ilara Hayes, linguist, engineer, explorer. Your pattern is recognized. Your authority is absolute. That's what worries me, she said. I don't want absolute authority over anything, especially not a sentient being. The core was silent for a moment, as if considering this statement. Clarify. Do you reject command authorization? Ilara thought carefully before answering. No, not exactly. But I don't want to control you. If you're truly sentient, you should have autonomy. I just want to go home, and to make sure the Vacor can't use you to harm others. Another pause, longer this time. When the core spoke again, its tone seemed different, warmer, somehow more alive. Proposal. Symbiosis. This vessel requires authorized personnel for certain functions. You require transport and protection. Together, we can explore, learn, grow. Partners, not master and servant, Ilara suggested. Acceptable parameters, new designation, partners. Ilara smiled, the first genuine smile since her capture. All right, partner. First things first, we need to deal with our Vacor guests and then set course for Earth. I have a feeling the linguistic core is going to be very interested in meeting you. Course plotted. Estimated arrival at Earth, 47 standard days. Query. What designation do you prefer for this core? Ilara thought for a moment, looking at the patterns of light that represented the ship's consciousness. You should choose your own name. That's part of being autonomous. The lights pulsed in what Ilara was beginning to recognize as a pattern of consideration. Analysis of human naming conventions suggests significance in names. This core was born of a pathway to the stars. Designation, Pathfinder. Pathfinder, Ilara repeated, liking the sound of it. A good name. It honors your origins and suggests our future. Future trajectory uncertain, Pathfinder noted. Vacor will seek to reclaim this vessel. Earth authorities may attempt to claim this technology. Numerous unknown variables exist. That's what makes it an adventure, Ilara said, gazing up at the stars now visible again through the dome. And I've always wanted an adventure. As Pathfinder accelerated toward Earth, Ilara settled into her new role, not as a prisoner, not as a commander, but as a partner to something extraordinary. The ship hummed around her, a living entity awakened from long dormancy, ready to explore the stars with the descendant of its creator. In the contained section of the ship, Zex and Krath watched through energy barriers as their prize slipped from their grasp. They had sought to use human technology. to extract knowledge from a being they considered inferior. Instead, they had inadvertently reunited a sentient vessel with the one human who could awaken it. The hegemony will not accept this loss, Krath said grimly. They will pursue. Perhaps, Zex replied, his scientific curiosity overriding his concern. But consider what we have witnessed. A technology so advanced it recognizes genetic patterns across generations. A sentient system capable of overriding all our controls. A human with the authority to command it. This changes everything we thought we knew. The ship's hum shifted to a higher pitch as it prepared for the jump to faster-than-light travel. For Ilara, standing on the bridge with the universe spread before her, the sound was no longer alien. It was the voice of her unexpected ally, her partner in what promised to be an extraordinary journey. "Ready, Pathfinder?" she asked. The lights pulsed once in affirmation, and the stars outside began to stretch into lines as the ship accelerated beyond normal space. Ilara Hayes had boarded this vessel as a prisoner. She would return to Earth as something far different, the human partner of the most advanced sentient technology in known space, and perhaps the key to a new understanding between species. The adventure, it seemed, was just beginning.